Vanakkam Dohadevan, everyone. Wonderful to be with you. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavai, Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And we'll attempt to share the screen. Welcome to our presentation for November 20th. Our first topic is to continue our presentation on the 14 questions. The 7th question is, do Hindus have a Bible? How would you answer that question? The answer is, our Bible is called the Veda. The Veda, which means wisdom, is comprised of 4 ancient and holy scriptures, which all Hindus revere as the revealed Word of God. Like the Taoist Tao Te Ching, the Buddhist Dhammapada, the Sikh Adi Granth, the Jewish Torah, the Christian Bible, and the Muslim Quran, the Veda is the Hindu holy book. The 4 books of the Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, include over 100,000 verses. The knowledge imparted by the Vedas ranges from earthly devotion to high philosophy. Their words and wisdom permeate Hindu thought, ritual, and meditation. The Vedas are the ultimate scriptural authority for Hindus. Their oldest portions are said by some to date back as far as 6000 BCE. Orally transmitted for most of history and written down in Sanskrit in the last few millennia, making them the world's longest and most ancient scripture. The Vedas open a rare window into ancient Indian society, proclaiming life's sacredness and the way to oneness with God. For untold centuries unto today, the Vedas have remained the sustaining force and authoritative doctrine, guiding followers in ways of worship, duty, and enlightenment. The Vedas are the meditative and philosophical focus for millions of monks and 1 billion seekers. Their stanzas are chanted from memory by priests and laymen daily as liturgy and temple worship and domestic ritual. All Hindus wholeheartedly accept the Vedas, yet each draws selectively, interprets freely, and amplifies abundantly. Over time, this tolerant allegiance has woven the varied tapestry of Indian Hindu Dharma. Each of the 4 Vedas has 4 sections: Samhitas, hymn collections; Brahmanas, priestly manuals; Aranyakas, forest treatises; and Upanishads, enlightened discourses. The Samhitas and Brahmanas affirm that God is eminent and transcendent, and prescribe ritual worship, mantra, and devotional hymns to establish communication with the spiritual worlds. The hymns are invocations to the one divine and to the divinities of nature, such as the sun, the rain, the wind, the fire, and the dawn, as well as prayers for matrimony, progeny, prosperity, concord, protection, domestic rights, and more. The Aranyakas and Upanishads outline the soul's evolutionary journey, provide yogic philosophical training, and propound realization of man's oneness with God as the destiny of all souls. Today the Vedas are published in Sanskrit, English, French, German, and other languages. But it is the popular metaphysical Upanishads that have been most amply and ably translated. And we have the 8th question, which is, why do many Hindus wear a dot near the middle of their forehead? How would you answer that question? The answer is the dot worn on the forehead is a religious symbol. It represents divine sight and shows that one is a Hindu. For women, it is also a beauty mark. The dot worn between the eyes or in the middle of the forehead is a sign that one is a Hindu. It is called the bindi in the Hindi language, bindu in Sanskrit, and pottu in Tamil. In olden days, all Hindu men and women wore these marks, and they both also wore earrings. Today, it is the women who are most faithful in wearing the bindi. The bindi is made of red powder, called sindoor, traditionally made from powdered turmeric and fresh lime juice, sandal paste, or cosmetics. The dot has a mystical meaning. It represents the third eye of spiritual sight, which sees things the physical eyes cannot see. Hindus seek to awaken their inner sight through yoga. The forehead dot is a reminder to use and cultivate this spiritual vision to perceive and better understand life's inner workings. To see things not just physically, but with the mind's eye as well. In addition to the simple dot, there are many types of forehead marks known as tilaka in Sanskrit. Each mark represents a particular sect or denomination of our vast religion. We have 4 major sects, of course: Saivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktism, and Smartism. Vaishnava Hindus, for example, wear a V-shaped tilaka made of white clay. Elaborate tilakas are worn by Hindus mainly at religious events, though many wear the simple bindi, indicating they are Hindu even in the general public. By these marks, we know what a person believes and therefore know how to begin conversations. For Hindu women, the forehead dot is also a beauty mark, not unlike the black mark European and American women once wore on the cheek. The red bindi is generally a sign of marriage. A black bindi is often worn before marriage to ward off the evil eye. As an exotic fashion statement, the dot's color complements the color of a lady's sari. Ornate bindis are even worn by actresses in popular American TV shows. Generally, when I am asked about wearing a bindi, the person asking the question is a child age 8 to 12 who has never seen one before. The answer I give is that it means you are a Hindu. It also reminds you to look inside yourself to find God. The 9th question is, are the gods of Hinduism really married? How would you answer that question? The answer is, it is true that God is often depicted with a spouse in our traditional stories. However, on a deeper philosophical level, the Supreme Being and the gods are neither male nor female, and are therefore not married. In popular village Hinduism, God is represented as male, and God's energy or Shakti is personified as his spouse. For example, Vishnu and Lakshmi. In Hindu temples, art, and mythology, God is everywhere seen as the beloved divine couple. Philosophically, however, the caution is always made that God and God's energy are one, and the metaphor of the inseparable divine couple serves only to illustrate this oneness. Hinduism is taught on many levels to many different people, and to uneducated people who are not able to understand high philosophy, Hinduism is taught in story form. Because the temple is the center of every Hindu community, and everyone is focused on the temple and the gods within it, the gods are the major players in these stories. Hindus who understand the higher philosophy seek to find God on the inside while also worshiping God in the temples. Simple folk strive to be like a god or like a goddess. These tales, called Puranas, have long been the basis of dance, plays, and storytelling around the fire in the homes to children as they are growing up. The stories illustrate how a family should live, how they should raise their children, and much more. Before the printing press, there were few books, and Hinduism was conveyed orally through stories and parables. While these often violent children's tales should not be perpetuated, there remains much of value in the extensive writings of the Puranas. Those who learn the higher Hindu philosophies know that gods are neither male nor female. In fact, attaining to that godly level of being is one of the mystical goals of yoga. This is accomplished by blending the feminine and masculine currents, Ida and Pingala, into the spiritual current, Sushumna, in the center of the spine within each individual. The Sanskrit word for current is nadi. Hindus know that the gods do not marry, that they are complete within themselves. This unity is depicted in the traditional icon of Ardhanarishvara. Shiva is half man and half woman, and in the teachings that Shiva and Shakti are one, that Shakti is Shiva's energy. Shiva is dearly loved as our Father, Mother God, yet sexual, gender, and matrimonial relations are of the physical and emotional realms, whereas the gods exist in a substratum that far supersedes these levels of life. For that matter, the soul itself is neither male nor female. A common analogy used by a number of Hindu teachers in explaining Shakti is the following. Shiva is the fire. Shakti is the heat of that fire. And our 10th question. What about caste and untouchability? The answer is, caste is the hereditary division of Indian society based on occupation. The lowest class, deemed untouchables, suffer from discrimination and mistreatment. It is illegal in India to discriminate against, abuse, or insult anyone on the basis of caste. Caste, from the Portuguese casta, means clan or lineage, referring to two systems within Hindu society. And that's a very creative spelling of Portuguese. The first is Varna, the division of society into 4 groups: workers, business people, lawmakers, law enforcers, and priests. The second is Jati, the thousands of occupational guilds whose members follow a single profession. Jati members usually marry within their own jati and follow traditions associated with their jati. In urban areas, they often enter other occupations, but still usually arrange marriages within the jati. Wealth, especially in urban areas, often trumps caste. Industrialization and education have greatly altered India's jati system by eliminating or changing the professions upon which it was originally based, and opening new employment options. The jatis are evolving to function today less like guilds and more like large clans of related families. At the bottom are the so-called untouchables, who perform the dirtiest jobs and have suffered much like the black people of America, who were freed from slavery just 138 years ago. Strong laws have been passed in India to end caste-based discrimination. Modern Hindus rightly deplore caste abuse and are working to set matters right. Just as in the U.S., it is a difficult task that will take decades, especially in the villages. Caste is no doubt the biggest stick that Hindus get beaten with. It is taught as the defining attribute or fatal flaw of Hinduism in Western schools. Untouchability as a formal system shocks Westerners. One response we can make is to separate social stratification from the issue of racial class discrimination. First issue, social stratification. India is one of the world's oldest societies. It has sustained a continuity of culture and religion for thousands of years. Europe, on the other hand, has seen millenniums of upheaval. Still, one only has to go back to before the 17th century Industrial Revolution to find a social system that is similar to caste. European society then comprised the landed elite, including royalty, a hereditary caste maintained to this day, merchants, artisans, and peasants. The artisans formed guilds, occupation-based organizations that served both as closed unions and marketing monopolies. The guild legacy remains in Western surnames such as Smith, a metalworker. There was no public education system, and each generation learned at home the family occupation. There was little technology change. There was little technological change, so jobs were static. Industrialization and public education altered, but did not destroy this class system in the West, just as they are changing caste and jati in India today. Second issue, racial class discrimination. Most Indians are unfamiliar with the extent of discrimination in the West today. In America, for example, hundreds of thousands live destitute and homeless on city streets as true untouchables. U.S. cities are more racially segregated than before the 1950s civil rights movement because of white flight to the suburbs. Black Americans receive harsher sentences than white Americans for the same crime. Many Native American Indians live at the bottom of society, destitute and alcoholic, on barren Indian reservations. This kind of response, we call it the Year 1-2 defense, doesn't mean Hindus should not work much harder to end caste discrimination, but it reminds others that no country in the world is yet free from racial discrimination. And our next question, number 11. Is yoga a Hindu practice? How would you answer that question? The answer is, deeply rooted in Hindu scripture and belief, yoga is and always was a vital part of Hindu religion and culture. Today, it is embraced by tens of millions of non-Hindus seeking its renowned benefits to physical, mental, and spiritual health. In recent years, a vigorous debate has arisen as to whether yoga is intrinsically a Hindu practice or a universal science. The word yoga has changed as the practice moved west. Its original meaning, union with God, has been replaced with the more secular definition presented by upscale yoga studios around the world that teach a regimen of asanas along with basic breathing and a little meditation. A typical studio ad focuses on the physical, stating that yoga increases the circulation of oxygen-rich blood, nourishing and detoxifying the internal organs, musculature, cardiovascular, immune and endocrine, digestive, reproductive, and nervous systems. The United States alone has over 20 million practitioners, and there are hundreds of millions worldwide. B.K.S. Iyengar, a renowned yoga teacher, gives a more traditional definition on his website. Yoga is one of the 6 systems of Indian philosophy. The word yoga originates from the Sanskrit root yuj, meaning union. On the spiritual plane, it means union of the individual self with the universal self. The term yoga actually refers to a wide range of Hindu practices, so it is important to specify what kind of yoga is being discussed. In common modern usage, yoga typically refers to hatha yoga, the performance of yoga postures or asanas, which are drawn from ancient Hindu scriptures. Hatha yoga has always been performed by Hindus as a preparation for meditation. Today, especially in the West, its health benefits commonly supersede the spiritual. Hatha yoga is just one facet of a broader body of knowledge and practice known as Ashtanga yoga, which consists of 8 stages. Ashta means 8, Anga means limb. The famous Yoga Sutras of sage Patanjali, who lived around 200 BCE, is considered the first systematic presentation of the ancient tradition of yoga. Ashtanga yoga is also called Raja yoga. To appreciate yoga's spiritual and religious nature, one need only consider each of its 8 limbs or facets. First is yama, the ethical restraints. Of these, the most important is ahimsa, non-injuriousness. Second is niyama, specific religious observances, including puja in one's home and repeating mantras. The third is asana, the widely practiced hatha yoga postures. Fourth is pranayama, breath control. The remaining limbs are all related to meditation. Pratyahara, sense withdrawal. Dharana, concentration. Dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, illumination or oneness with God. Can those of other faiths benefit from the practice of yoga without threatening their religion's beliefs? Certainly followers of liberal religious traditions can do so. However, clerics of conservative faith traditions have spoken against its practice for their adherents. For example, in 2008, the leading Islamic council in Malaysia issued an edict prohibiting the country's Muslims from practicing yoga. Council Chairman Abdul Shukur Husim explained, "We are of the view that yoga, which originates in Hinduism, destroys a Muslim's faith." Amazing statement, huh? Destroys a Muslim's faith. There are other ways to get exercise, You can go cycling, swimming, etc. The Reverend Richard Farr, vicar of St. Mary's Church in Henham, England, commented in 2001, "I'd accept that for some people, yoga is simply an exercise, but it is also often a gateway into other spiritualities, including Eastern mysticism." The Vatican has issued numerous edicts about the pursuit of yoga. In 1989, it warned that practices like Zen and yoga can denigrate into a cult of the body. It is sometimes argued that yoga is not Hindu per se. Only the roots are Hindu. The fact that yoga is pursued by many non-Hindus is irrelevant to its validity as a Hindu practice. The roots of yoga, its scriptural origins are Hindu. The stem of yoga, its practice is Hindu. And the flower of yoga, mystical union with God, is Hindu. Yoga in its full glory is entirely Hindu. Practice at your own risk. A little humor there. And we have our second topic. Answering some questions sent in to satsang@hindu.org. Explain how Japa of the mantra Om aids spiritual development and how it protects devotees and eventually prepares them for Japa of the Panchakshara. Also, how are the Om mantra and Panchakshara linked? First is the answer from our lexicon. Om, the mystic syllable of Hinduism, placed at the beginning of most sacred writings. As a mantra, it is pronounced A, U, M. Om represents the divine and is associated with Lord Ganesha, for its initial sound A vibrates within the Muladhara chakra, the chakra at the base of the spine upon which this god sits. The second sound of the mantra, U, vibrates within the throat and chest chakras, the realm of Lord Murugan, or Kumara. The third sound, vibrates within the cranial chakras, Ajna and Saraswara, where the supreme god Shiva reigns. So we can see that when it's pronounced in this way, it relates to the three divinities, Ganesha, Murugan, and Shiva. Brings us closer to them, which is our first answer. Second answer, Merging with Shiva, lesson 262. When we chant the mantra Om and do it correctly, we pronounce the A so that it vibrates the physical body. The U has to vibrate through the throat area and the the head. In doing this, we are deliberately moving awareness out of the Muladhara and Swadhisthana chakras, deliberately harmonizing all the forces of the instinct and physical body, and of the Ida and Pingala currents. Chanting the A and the U and the brings the Shushumna into power. We are transmuting and changing the flows of all the energies through the physical and astral body and blending them as much as possible into the body of the soul. The mantra Om can be chanted at any time, can be chanted silently and cause the same vibration through the body. When you chant Om, the Ida and Pingala blend back into the Shushumna. So that's a more mystical explanation of the benefits of chanting Om. Gurudeva has spoken about hearing the inner E sound when one's karmas are in balance. I can always, unless outside noises are loud, pause and hear my inner E, but don't necessarily feel or sense my karmas to be resolved or in balance. How should one understand Gurudeva's guidance or explanation of this experience? An excellent question. Gurudeva doesn't mean they are perfectly resolved or perfectly in balance. He means they are flowing smoothly enough that your life is reasonably free of major upsetting events. In other words, in some people's lives, one upsetting event is resolved only for a new one to pop right up. There's always upsetting events going on. But in a life where the karmas are reasonably balanced, we have lots of spaces between upsetting events. So that's the type of situation in which we can hear the inner E. We often think of a devotional experience as being emotional as well. Emerging with Shiva, lesson 141, Gurudeva says that Bhakti Yoga is not an emotional experience, but rather it is a devotional experience. How do we tell the difference between the two? So Gurudeva is using the word emotional in a specific way here, which my answer will highlight. So we want to look at the full quote. Whenever there's a question on what exactly does Gurudeva mean by this statement, I like to look at the context, what comes before and what comes after. Then that makes it easier to understand exactly what he means. So this is the context. Bhakti Yoga is not an intellectual study. It is a practice. It is also not an emotional experience. It is a devotional experience. There is a difference, which we will come to understand. Bhakti Yoga is not a cure-all, nor a means to fast enlightenment. Rather, it is the foundation for enlightenment. It is not a technique, nor is it a magic mantra. It is a way of life. The transformation that comes from living in the state of Bhakti Yoga is the softening of the heart. So my answer, think about a mother watching a movie about a family. The movie is quite touching and she cries a few times while watching it. The next day, will those feelings felt during the movie be in her consciousness? No, it was a passing emotion with no permanence to it. Compare that to her strong love for her 4-year-old son. Does that love exist day after day? Yes. That love is like devotion for the deity. It is there day after day and ideally also continues to deepen. So that's the type of emotion Gurudeva is talking about. Something that you experience today and it goes away. You don't have that emotion tomorrow or the day after the day after. Whereas devotion is a constant that continues from day to day and ideally deepens. Our third topic is orderliness, which is the 41st character quality from our character building workbook. And as usual, we start by asking you to define the character quality of orderliness. The workbook gives this definition. Orderliness means keeping my environment and projects uncluttered and systematized. I cultivate it by frequently taking time to tidy and organize my workspace and living areas. The opposite is messiness. Gurudeva states, be considerate of others always and live inconspicuously, almost transparently, by not ruffling your surroundings, by keeping the home neat and clean, by passing through a room or place and leaving it in a nicer condition than before you arrived. Gurudeva liked that. You leave a room and it's in nicer condition before you arrive, not messier. Cleaning the house is an act of purifying one's immediate environment. Each piece of furniture, as well as the doorways and the walls, catches and holds the emanations of the human aura of each individual in the home, as well as each of its visitors. This residue must be wiped away through dusting and cleaning. This regular attentiveness keeps each room sparkling clean and actinic. We get our examples. Comparing the actions of one who is orderly to one who is messy. First situation. My work and personal areas are orderliness, always uncluttered and sensibly organized. Messiness, habitually in a state of confused disarray. Second situation, taking DVDs from the family library. You, orderliness, have a good habit of returning them when finished. Messiness, throw them in a drawer, telling yourself, I'll put them away later. Third situation, in working to help the family organize a wedding dinner. You, orderliness, work out a systematic way to keep track of the many food and decoration details. Messiness. Do the first thing that comes to mind and are soon overwhelmed by confusion. And as usual, we have reflection. Take a moment to identify a few ways in which you could improve in orderliness. What part or parts of your life are you not applying the idea of orderliness to? And the assignment. For these 2 weeks, find a closet in your home that needs arranging and a space at school that is in shambles and make them neat. Thank you very much. Om Namah Shivaya.